Well, shalom. Today we're back to some spear making because it's basically a snow day. The temperatures have plummeted into the 20s. I'm invigorated with the cold weather. I've got my hide, I've got my spear, and some needs for modification and lessons learned about actually carrying a spear around the woods in normal land where highways and cars and people are, because it's definitely prone to make people moderately nervous, which I'm super comfortable with, assuredly so. And you know what? Today's the day where Jubilee and Naomi get spears. Because this morning I was telling Jubilee and Naomi stories about all the bears I've encountered in my life. And as I was telling them these things, I realized it's probably not normal that most children grew up chasing bears. And straight up, that's exactly what I did. You know, my family had a bed and breakfast in the mountains outside of Colorado Springs, Colorado. And we had a bear issue. Back in like 2007, 2008, 2009, there was severe droughts in Colorado. Hold on, let me sit on this riverbank grape. This is the gigantic grapevine. Look at that. It's amazing. I can't wait. Not for me, maybe, in this lifetime. But there were bears ferociously invading the highland hills of Colorado Springs because when there's major droughts, there's food scarcity. You ever heard of famines? They're very biblical. I've been reading my way through the entire Bible, audio narrative style, and there's some serious quantities of famines at time. One of them happens in King David's reign. I'll get to the bears, hold on. King David, by the way, battled bears. Why are there no bears over in Israel today? Maybe Israel's not over there like we think of it today. Anyways, something to consider. Just tuck it away. King David has this absolute horrific famine that takes place in his lifetime. At the end, towards the end of his reign, like when he's like established, like the whole insurrection has happened from Absalom, you know, he came up. There's another guy after Absalom, like right after Absalom, who's like, let me get a bunch of mighty men and run around with a chariot. Apparently back then you could buy the hearts of men by just having a bunch of buff dudes run around with you for 50 dudes just running ahead of you and being like, the king, the king. Maybe it's like that today. Politicians. Think about it. Just saying. Anyways, the original PR campaigns were just strong dudes. Highly effective. Check this out. King David, he's got famine for 3 years in the land. They're like, what is even happening? He's like, why, Yahuah, why? He's like, because King Saul in his zealousness killed the Gibeonites. Dang it. Don't kill the Gibeonites, because back in Joshua, I think it's chapter 8 or 9, somewhere in there, listen to the audiobook below of Joshua and you can find out for yourself. The Gibeonites slyly, deceitfully hid themselves. I think they were Hittites or Hivites. And they disguised themselves and put on really ragged, savage clothing and took dry, crusty bread and wineskins that were cracked and just exhausted looking. And they went and came to Joshua and was like, hey, can we be your friends and allies? Because we know Yahuah's done great things for you. And he's like, how do we know you're not from near here? And they're like, look at our bread. It's super old. Look at our clothes, they're worn out, and sandals are worn out. And they're like, okay. So he swears a covenant of peace to them. Then he finds out 3 days later, dang it, these people are our neighbors that we're supposed to slaughter. But because of the oath, they swore that they would always be the drawers of water and the hewers of wood all their days. They'd be guys with this stuff for the temple of Yahuah. Anyways, King Saul, fast forward a couple hundred years, starts slaughtering a bunch of them. Terrible. But you know what's peculiar? Yahuah withholds judgment during the entire life of Saul. He never judges Saul for the transgression. He never even judges him, like, in any way, shape, or form during the first 10, 20, 30 years of David's reign. And you're like, why? Why did he withhold judgment until later on in David's reign, after his reign was established? And I've really started wrestling with that. Like, why is it Yahuah withholds judgment against the wicked? Because some of us, I think, are battling the frustration continually as to why the wicked seem to prosper. I read the book of Psalms. Check out that link below. You read through the book of Psalms, and David definitely wrestles with this conundrum, because he's like, why is it that the wicked seem to be prosperously set up? Like, they're comfortable while we're out here living in tents. Why? He's like, why is Yahuah dwelling in the house of tents? He doesn't even have a house of cedar. And he's like, and the wicked are prospering all around me. And they're like sleeping well. And he's like, why is it that their days are easy and ours are filled with toil and hardship? Jacob, when he was asked, like, hey, how's your life been, to King Pharaoh, the Pharaoh of Mitzrayim? He's like, many have my days been of suffering and evil. Like, few have my days been of good. My life has been filled with suffering and misery. Like, life sometimes is just brutal, absolutely savage, kick you directly in the front teeth, kick the legs right out from under you, miserable. And I think a lot of you know what I'm talking about. But then it seems like the wicked prosper, and you're like, when is there mishpah? When is there justice? And this was generational justice that was served later on. For King Saul's transgression gets served on to King David. And you're like, this seems so jacked up. But you know what? It allowed Yahuah to orchestrate in David justice. David was allowed to be the one who brought justice to the Gibeonites, who seemed like their justice was never delivered to him, who were wrestling with whether or not they were ever going to be granted deliverance from the persecution and the murdering that happened for them. And so King David inquires of Yahuah, and he says, you know what? It's because of this transgression, it needs to be dealt with. Before that can be taken care of, nothing else can come forward. Nothing else can happen in your kingdom. There will literally be no rain for the entire kingdom of Israel until this is dealt with. And so King David goes and asks the Gibeonites, he's like, how can we make this right? And they're like, we don't want anything from you. He's like, we don't want gold or silver or any of this. He's like, just let the king's sons die. And David saves Mephibosheth, which is Jonathan's son, because he swore an oath to him. And he saves his life, but he allows 7 of the sons of Saul to be slaughtered as an atonement for what took place in the days of King Saul. And you know what? After this, Yahuah restored the lands, and he brought about deliverance. And you know what? Even though it seems like Yahuah is slow to bring about justice, assuredly he never, ever fails to do so. He is always more than capable of doing it. And you know what? I've seen him do this many times in my life and in others' lives. So like, as much as you may be begrudged at the wicked, intercede for them, y'all. Because you know what? The day of Yahuah is near, and surely it is dreadful. And we don't want to see any of our adversaries go into judgment, being cast into the outer darkness. And as much as you might despise them and revile them, and you look at the agents of evil, they're under the influence of spiritual powers, principalities, powers, rulers, dominions, thrones, spiritual wickedness in high places that cause them, that influence them, that use their bodies like a skin suit to parasitically feed upon the hearts and the souls and the minds of men. And they need deliverance just as much as any single one of us from the strongholds of wickedness that are resting in our hearts that we need to daily drive out, okay? I hope you would be considering the power of intercessory prayer for your adversaries, for your enemies, to bless those who curse you, and to do good to those who harm you and speak all kinds of evil blasphemies against you. By doing so, Yahuah is inclined towards us, because how we treat others is how we ourselves want to be treated. And there's been times and days in your lives and moments of your times that if you took a snapshot of you, you would not want that to be the moment that was reflective indicator of who you are, your character. You would want mercy, loving commitment. And you know what? As we extend that towards others, Yahuah surely extends it towards us. And so I ask and pray that you guys will do likewise. That being said, there was this great famine in the land back in 2007, 2008. And the bears just became ferocious. And we were up in this mountain town, and we had this big storage container, big shed, wood shed, strong, robust thing. And you know what? We used to put our trash in there. And the bears figured out that this was like a candy cave. And they would go in there and just pull open the door and take out all the trash and just devour it all over the place. And so this became like a weekly occurrence. And then it became almost a daily occurrence. And there was no matter of locks and bolts and ways of trying to secure the door. These bears would just pull this 200-300 pound door right off of there and just get into it all the time. And so my family set about chasing the bears off. And this is like my life became about chasing animals and just learning to not be afraid of these animals, that generally, people frighten animals. And even animals that get desensitized to humans still can have the fear of men put back on them. And so this got so bad at some point in there, my dad began to put bags filled with ammonia covered in peanut butter on the outside of the door so that maybe they'd lick it and bite it and then be like, ah! Ammonia is this putrid smell that you get in cat pee and turkey and bird waste. It's awful. It burns the eyes. Well, that wasn't enough to deter the bears. It seemed like they just drank the ammonia and just kept eating the peanut butter and didn't care and went back for the trash. So instead, we took up super soakers. And we literally filled them with ammonia, and then we would run directly at the face of the bear and shoot the bear. I was a child. I was innocent in all regards to this. However, we would try to chase the bears with the ammonia and super soakers and try to shoot them. So I grew up very comfortable chasing bears. And I was telling my daughters this morning about how you just talk to bears. And now, like, all throughout my life, in the mountains of Colorado, and way up at like 9,000 feet in elevation, I would be on night watch at this camp, this wilderness camp called Gold Lake up in the mountains of Colorado. And there would be bears out there, and they likewise would try to get into the trash or whatever else. And you just chase them off. You literally just chase bears. This is what you learn. You literally are violently intense into their face, and you have to be ferocious and not show that fear. And Naomi and Jubilee are listening very intently as I'm telling them these different encounters I've had with bears. And Jubilee looks over at Naomi and she's like, Daddy, she's like, Naomi, I'm scared of bears. I don't want the bears to eat me. And she goes, but if I had a spear, I would be okay. And Jubilee just keeps talking about this spear. And I'm just adamantly convinced she is like born to be like Methuselah. She needs a spear. So I got some hickory for her. If you didn't know it, hickory is like my absolutely favorite tree ever, which is why I'm in a forest full of hickory and oaks. Yonder, hickory. All the straight looking thin ones with very smooth bark, that's all hickory trees. They're marvelous. Let me see. Try to give you a little better view there. Those are hickories. They grow very straight and they grow great shade. Oh. They're a wonderful tree. Plant hickories. Change the world. Next to me here is an oak. Those are also strong. But hickories are amazing because they have tensile strength, incredible compression strength. They can take a lot of abuse, and they're amazing for handles like axes. They're basically the best axe handle ever because you can just wail on them and they don't break. Like, that's pretty much why every camping axe handle you've ever handled in your life is made of hickory. Sometimes ash, but generally hickory. It's better. Yes, I said it. Deal with it. They're amazing handles. And so I decided today's the day I'm gonna have some for the girls. So I'm just gonna show you guys the basic process of it because I got little tiny spear heads for the girls. At first I started with big ones, like this. This is one I got for Chelsea. See this? It's an agate. It's beautiful like she is. Complex and full of all kinds of layers like women are. Lovely, right? This is the one I'm gonna haft onto Chelsea's, which is gonna go on probably cedar because she's complex and wonderful and incredibly fireproof. Sorry. She kindles a fire in my soul, the opposite of fireproof. She's fireproof, but my love for her is not. Check this out, though. She really likes cedar because it's lightweight. And I think I'm going to put this one on here because she really liked it. And I'll let her have that one. She's not likely going to be going and smashing into stuff too often, so I think it'll work for her. Otherwise, the girls are getting hickory. The thing we ran into with a lot of my staffs, like most of my hiking staffs are like yay height. I like to cut them to about this tall because it works for me. But we discovered something. As I've been walking through the forest everywhere with my spear, sometimes I'm going downhill. And when I'm walking downhill with my spear, sometimes this is how it is. And that's super sketchy. And you realize suddenly why there was a length of spears that was appropriated for people, which was much longer. Not the 5-6 foot range. More like the this range. Or like the this range. 8 to 10 feet, 12 to 14 feet, because you don't want to poke yourself in the face when you're going downhill. So I'm also going to modify my spear. I got this at an antique store. Isn't that just beautiful? I love bronze. I really want bronze stuff. Until then, I've got copper. It seems like there's not enough bronzeware. Biblical cookware, by the way, barbecue pits, were made out of bronze. Check it out. Why don't we have bronze grills? Something to consider. Get bronzy in your life. This is a copper lightning rod. I saw this in an antique store and was like, it's a perfect bayonet. And I was like, this is beautiful. It's old lightning rods off the top of old buildings, and it's threaded and everything. So what I'm gonna do is I wanna be able to like fight with the blunt end of the spear like Joab when he was running from, no. Hold on, back up a second. The commander of the army of Israel under King Saul, Abner. Abner killed Joab's brother when he was chasing him. Joab's brother was just ferociously, is it Amasah? Oh, I'm going to miss it. Dang it. Azahel. Swifter than the gazelles. Azahel. Ahithophel. Dang it. There's 3 brothers. Anyways, the sons of Zeruiah. They keep giving David just savage anguish. So anyways, Abner is chasing him. They're running fiercely, fast, like dangerously so. And he's like, turn away from me and go and pick up one of the other guy's armor and leave me alone. And he's like, no. I'm going to chase you down, Abner. I will kill you. And he's like, leave me alone. How can I look at Joab's face after I kill you? And he's like, he would not leave him alone. So Abner, it says he took the blunt end of the spear and stabbed him through the stomach, and it came out his backside, meaning it just completely impaled him and went through his rear. And he died there. Anyways, Joab holds a grudge against this guy for a long time, and he ends up killing Abner and acting like it was a, like, whoops, sorry, dropped my sword in front of you, and then ran it through his stomach and killed him. Anyways, he got put to death for that slaughtering fest later on by Benaiah, King Solomon's commander of his army later on. Can we just talk about how bloodshed and savage the beginning of the first book of Kings is for a second? I know it seems a little tangential, y'all, but I'm reading a lot of the Bible lately, like hours and hours and hours every day. And I just read 1 Kings this morning. Dang! Benaiah, Yahuah in this rendition. King David's last words to his son, the last words, he's like, be strong and be courageous and be a man. And then he's like, oh, and remember to kill all these guys for me right before he dies. You're like, dang. Not exactly like the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, which is highly recommended. They like go to sleep in peace in their fathers. They don't put out hit lists right before they die, but dang, King David sure does. He's like, you make sure that the blood comes back on his own head. Sweet. So then he sends Benaiah out to just slaughter a bunch of guys. He's a total assassin for him. And that's one of the guys he kills. He's like, Joab's gonna die because he killed Abner in the time of peace, and he put the blood of battle on his belt and on his sandals. Anyways, he dies for that. So ever since then, since I was a wee lad, I've always thought about the blunt end of a spear. So I've looked for what could I make my blunt end of the spear with. So I'm gonna use this lightning rod, and I'm gonna affix it to the end of this thing, and it's gonna give me just about that much more height. And I think that will keep the spear from going directly in my eye, and it'll work better. Second thing I've learned about the spear. I need to take this haft off because I was plunge cutting into stuff with it recently, and I realized that this thrusting area, I didn't thin this out. I'd never hafted a spear, y'all. Had no idea. Total ignorance. Anyways, I need to thin out the profile of it so that it's angled to come in just like the spear is. And I'm going to take this wax linen off, and I have got sinew finally. I've got tendons from the back strap of an animal, and I'm going to take those tendons and chew them up and get them nice and mucilaginous and moist, and I'm going to wrap it up, and then I've got pitch. Pitch is made from a little bit of animal fat and pine sap. That's the best one generally. I've got wild cherry sap too, but it's a little, it breaks down in water a little too easy. Instead, I just chew the cherry sap. It's delicious.
For those of you that
maybe
have never heard of sinew before, here's sinew. You get this off the back strap of a goat or a deer or a sheep, or you can do leg tendons. And yeah, this just came off the back of one. Basically, right where the meat attaches to the back, there is this incredible sinew, connective tissue. It gives it springiness. And you cut this, there's generally a little bit of skin and fat. Cut that off. Down below it, you got this thin layer of this right before you get to the meat. You cut that off and you can let it dry. Then you peel off pieces of it, put it in your mouth to hydrate it, get it a little sticky and moist, and then you wrap it just like that. And as it dries, it shrinks and it hardens. Beautiful, right? And then I've got my pitch, which is like nature's hot glue. Heat it up, drip it on there, and I'm going to seal it.
Basically water-ish proof, kind of, when you add the pitch. Once you add the pitch, just like Noah's Ark style, you're good to go. Because otherwise, I've got wobble in my blade, which is scary. So, that's the update for today. Let me just get to it now. Let me show you. So, for Jubilee's height, what I'm doing is I'm going about a whole hand's length above their head so that the spear point's gonna come out a little bit from them. I got opalite for them. Little opalite spearheads, basically arrowheads. That's the ones I'm doing for the girls. It's called opalite. It's beautiful, semi-precious stone. Absolutely lovely like they are. And I'm gonna mount it to the top of this. So, I take my hickory. I take my two favorite tools on the face of the earth, which is the handsaw. All this tree trimming you see around you has been done by handsaws because I'm ferociously committed to it. And I'm gonna pick a spot right there, and I'll show you something nifty. Check this out, y'all. If you want a leg vise, you put your leg like this. Check this out. And then, when you pinch down, it holds your stuff for you. It's like a second pair of hands. All right. So this one's gonna be Jubilee's. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna taper the ends in a little bit. And then that will be for hers. This one is for Naomi's. I just think as you read the Bible stories, y'all, I think my whole life goal has become bring the Bible to life. Just read the Bible and then do it. Live it. Like actually live out the stories of the scripture, because I can read it from my wee childhood days when I was actually chasing bears. But to be in a life where you're like, why don't we just try to live out the scriptures as much as we can? It's like experimental archaeologists. They're like, wow, I wonder how these people actually did this stuff. And then they find the tools and the artifacts and they go and try to make them themselves. To me, it's thrilling because you're like, I'm actually walking in the way of my ancestors. Like there is this ancient path revival that it just draws me into it. When I read the stories of the scripture, they've always been absolutely 100% certainly real to me. And I've never doubted. Like Yahuah imparted to me a great gift of faith when I was young, and it's only ever grown. Like I've seen this word be real, but now I want to raise it up in such a way that it's knowable, that it's like something that we can tangibly put our hands on. Like when you actually put your hands on a spear, you're like, wow, that feels great. And you're like, yeah, why don't we all have spears and bows? Like, so I've been working on making a bow. If you want to watch my video of me making a bow, now you can see the long chronicles of me trying to make an Osage orange bow, because it's the Ark of the Covenant wood. It's amazing. The Osage orange, hedge apple, horse apple, and I want to make a bow out of it. So I'm starting to try to do that. Now I'm starting with the wrong kind of tools, but I'm getting better every single day. By doing these things and actually walking it out, it makes my life so much more interesting. And I know that as we begin to walk in the ways of Yahuah and we do what's pleasing in his sight, he makes his words to come alive in us. And I want his word to come alive in you. So, if you need to invigorate your life, come forth out of the darkness that you've been in, where you have doubt and disbelief and despair, and come into the life where you live out the words like he said, like the very last words of the Messiah in the book of Matthew. He's like, go into the nations, teaching them these good things. Like, go and show people what I've shown you. Go and live the life that I have shown you. Like he physically came in the flesh to show you the authentic. He came to show you how to walk out the Torah, the loving instructions of Yahuah. He came to show you what it looked like when it was carried out, when it was born out. He like physically came here to show you this is how you live. He gave that to us as a gift so that we wouldn't be lost, so that we would know the way. We wouldn't have to doubt when it came around. Can we trust this word? Can we bet our life on it? Because we have so many great testimonies and witnesses of those who've gone before us, showing us he is not slow to he is not slow to give justice to those who need it. He is not slow like some count slowness in his coming and his return. And I desperately pray for his great return. At the same time, I pray and intercede for a delay in that great day of awe and wonder, and the day of darkness and gloom, like Joel chapter 2. Because the more we intercede for others, the more we ourselves will find intercession on our behalf. So I have to ask you all, have you prayed for your enemies today? Have you prayed for those who are persecuting you, for the rulers, for the authorities, for the judges, the magistrates, the politicians, the global elite, the conspiracists? Have you prayed for the people that are rendering wickedness on the earth? Have you interceded for them to find their own freedom? Because you know what? A traitor, an enemy to the enemy, is our ally. You need to create double agents, and the way you do that is not by continually cursing them. Shimei, that's one of the guys who was cursing David as he was running out of Israel when he fled from the Mount of Olives, when his son Absalom had rebelled against his kingdom and tried to take it from him. Shimei came out, a Benjamite, came out and was cursing him, throwing stones at David. And that's another time when Joab came up to him and was like, hey, let me take this guy's head off. See, if you don't have a sword in your hand, when you talk about things like, let me go cut that guy's head off, it doesn't have the same. But when you have a sword in your hand and you talk about cutting a guy's head off, it's a serious matter. He literally was like, let me go cut that guy's head off because he's cursing my sovereign. And he's like, what am I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? Stop wanting to kill everybody all the time. But you know what? King David said, perhaps Yahuah has appointed him to curse. Let him curse. But you know what? Let Yahuah hear it, and if he inclines towards me and has favor on me, I'll be delivered, right? And he can restore me. Basically, it's like this. If our enemies are setting up entire nations and global states of power and control to try to crush us and destroy us, let them do what they're going to do. But you know what? Yahuah can render unto us deliverance in any time, any way, any shape, any form. He can cause the trees themselves to stand up, clap their hands, and deliver us from all their persecution. You know what's crazy? Trees literally clap their hands. Check this out. I know it says it in Isaiah. It's super biblical. Right now, there's more cell signals right through the forest right now. But during the spring, when all the leaves come back on the trees, they literally, the cell phone companies have, the telecommunications companies, I should be clear, they have to recalibrate their angles and their points of reference for where their communications are going, because the trees interrupt their signals so powerfully. Water is an incredible inhibitor to EMF, electromagnetic signal, electromagnetic radiation. So when all the leaves suddenly come out on the trees, they're filled with water and they are evaporating. They're literally pumping off water. They're transpiring, they're sweating, and they're exhaling. They literally exhale. They have tiny little mouths called stomata on the bottom of their leaves. Thousands and thousands of little pores like you do on the bottom of your feet. And they open their mouths and they exhale water that's coming up from their root systems, and it allows them to cool off in those hot, sunny, sweltering days. When that happens, it literally blocks cell signals. They clap their hands as they're moving around, and they're blocking the cell signals, and they're literally a shield and an armor to you. Astounding. Yahuah's creation is ridiculously more complicated and wonderfully splendid and beautifully good at delivering people when they're in his ways. So don't be scared of all the tactics and the schemes of the adversary, and don't lay awake at night spending time thinking about our adversaries. Think about Yahuah. Study his ways. Study his word. Like, saturate yourself in the word. Like, actually sit there, listen to, and read the word constantly. And it does. It just infects you. It's so powerful. It's so wonderful. It washes your mind. And as you do that, you literally get transformed no longer into the pattern of this world, but you get renewed by the washing of your mind, the renewing of your mind. And then you get to know what is the will, the perfect will of Yahuah. To some of you, this may be things you've been a part of and been doing throughout your entire life. But others of us, it's a completely strange and foreign concept to even consider that we should pray for those who are doing evil against us and persecuting us. But Shimei surely did get what was coming to him eventually. Because you know what? King David fled to one of the cities out in the wilderness. From there, Joab led an army out into the forests, where it says the forest itself swallowed up and killed more people than the swords of the sons of Judah, sons of Yehudah, which is scary to think about. And Absalom, this man with long, flowing, great hair, who's the most beautiful of all the children in Israel, it says his hair got tangled in the oaks, the great oaks. Like this is a great oak right here behind me. There's another even bigger one over here. There's further ones back behind me. But his hair got caught up in the oak. And Joab, when he got to him, says he took 3 spears in his hands and ran them through his heart. Vanity got Absalom, man. You betcha. Because he used his vanity to steal the hearts of Israel. Dang it. He totally did. Well, when David got on his way back and crossed over the Jordan River, Shimei, the guy who was cursing him before, was there waiting for him. And he's like, hey, super sorry about the whole cursing thing. Really, 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 really sorry about that. Please have mercy on me and don't kill me. And David's like, listen, no more children of Israel are dying today. So he pardoned his life. That being said, he remembered what he did. He never forgot it, literally until the day of his death. And it was rendered unto him regardless. So even though it sometimes seems like Yahuah is not dealing justice against these evildoers, he never forgets. And he will surely render justice and deliverance to everyone for what they've done in this life. So be careful. Be careful, Yah's people, to follow all of his ways. Be careful, Yah's people, to follow all of his ways. Be careful, Yah's people, to follow all of his ways. You are not to turn aside to the left, to the right. You are not to turn aside to the left, but to the right. You must walk all of his ways. They are who are your Elohim commanded, that you may live a long and prosperous life for and there is only one way in, one way out of that narrow road that leads us to life. Few are they that find it, but to those who do, it's an everlasting kingdom of life. It's one I long for you to have each and every day. I love you all. It's absolutely been wonderful spending some time with you in the forest. I hope today that you invigorate your soul and you capture these wonderfully pristine, rare moments of time to intercede for Yahuah's people and for our adversaries, that we might be called sons of Yah. I love you. I'll talk to you soon.